name's Susanna Becchio, and I'm a senior at the Martha's Vineyard Regional High School. I'm here with Miss Vera Shorter, who's a local celebrity and notable member of the Martha's Vineyard community. We are here as a collaboration between the high school, the Association for the Study of African American History and Life, and MVTV, our local television station, in order to start a dialogue between prominent members of our community. Ms. Shorter, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
You're welcome.
Ms. Shorter has graciously allowed me to have multiple conversations with her to learn more about her family, career, and life. I am inspired to share her story with you today. So let's jump right in. Vera, if I may call you Vera.
Yeah, oh, you certainly may.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little about your mother's musical ability and your father's educational passion?
Well, I'd certainly be happy to. It's my mother, in her, my mother, if I'm 95, my mother lived a long time ago. And in the schools at that time, the kindergarten teacher was really a musician. I mean, she played for all assemblies, or he played, whoever it was, and they told stories and so forth. So one day, the kindergarten teacher was sick, and so they always played for assembly. So the principal said, well, we don't have a teacher, and I don't know if anybody can play the piano. And my mother said, I can, because she was just like I am, or I'm just like her, sort of mouthy. So he said, but you're only 10 years old. She said, well, I can play every song she played, meaning the teacher. And so she proceeded to play every song that they sang in assembly. And when her parents heard of this, they said, why didn't you tell us you could play the piano? They didn't know. They thought she was banging on it when they had a piano. So anyhow, they gave her lessons, and she did very well. She studied classical music. But what happened, she got a little older, and she got very interested in ragtime. And so the teacher said she couldn't play ragtime. That was, bad music. And so they told her mother, and her mother told her she had to stop. And she said, well, I'm not going to stop. I like that music, and therefore I am going to play. So that's how she started her musical career. But she really could, anything you sang or she heard, she could play. She was gifted, but I don't think her parents realized how much, how really gifted she was. But that's part of her story. And now my father, that's another story too. He came from Pennsylvania as a little bitty boy with his mother and one brother. And his mother had been what you call a lady's maid. A lady's maid is a much more talented person than a maid. I mean, because you have to sew, you have to embroider, and you have to do tatting and all of that fancy stuff. Plus you had to take care of the woman's clothes. So she had been in France a while, so she got, the people she worked for were in France, so she was there, and she loved it. So she taught my father French, and she loved books, so they started reading. So he started his reading career very early in his life. He did go to City College later on as an adult, but I don't think any experience was as wonderful to him as the experience with his mother, because I learned songs of different language songs from him. We all, it was a musical family. Every Saturday or Friday or whatever night we got together. When I had a brother and a sister, and when they were there, when we were all together, my brother played any kind of string instrument. He later became a professional bass player. And my sister sang, and I couldn't do anything because I couldn't understand the black and white keys, and my mother wasn't a good teacher. And so I just started dancing, so I danced. So in that sense, we were pretty happy together, because everybody had a little role to play, which is the way a family should be, I think, anyhow. So that, do you want me to tell you more about them or what? You go on, you ask me the questions, because I can go on forever on one topic.
Did your parents did they direct your education towards the arts at all as a young person?
Oh, sure. First of all, my father was a reader, so we all had to go to the library and had to get books out. My mother was more of a pragmatic person, so she got National Geographic or one of those magazines, and we like studied it. I mean, we got. I guess I shouldn't say study, because it really wasn't a study, but you found issues in there and you talked about them. So they really influenced the three of us with their interest us, and nobody had a fight about it, which later on we did with geometry and stuff like that. But at that point we were just very happy with one another, and I think it worked out. I guess so, because I'm still talking and I'm still singing off key, and I would dance if I could walk. So I think they got us interested in the arts, particularly my father, because we went to museums, we did things of that nature, which naturally make you think, because you want to know the history of things you're seeing, and so we would do that.
Well, it sounds like you had a great childhood. Moving closer to your formative years, can you tell me, were you involved in the arts in high school, and what subject did you excel?
I was literature. I was never an artist. I was interested in literature and field hockey. So it's two separate things, but they were wonderful for me. Although I wasn't attracted to them. I used to go off by myself and climb trees and look at the water, because we lived in a town where there was water, not the Vineyard, but Northport, Long Island. And I loved it. So that was fine with me. But in school, it was literature, poetry, ancient history, things like that. I was very fond of those topics. And I published in the yearbook when I was a senior. They published two of my poems. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Two of my poems and other things. And I wrote poetry all the time. So I wrote what I call posy, like not limerick, but almost limerick type, which I would write about people. And so they loved that. Everybody likes to be commemorated in some way. And even if you're making a little fun of them, as long as you're not mean, they love it. So anyhow, I used to do those kind of things. And of course, I played field hockey. I played field hockey because my sister was a really good athlete. See, I was not a good athlete. I was an athlete, but she really was great. And she wanted me to play basketball, field hockey, baseball. So I played all those, whatever you call it, sports. I played that. And one time, before I even got involved in this, I was walking across the field where you play, and I saw my sister doing something. I said, boy, she's good. I mean, even I thought so. And she saw me, and she called me, and she said to the coach, Miss Meany, her name was Meany, and I still remember it, and she was mean too. But her name represented her, but she wasn't mean. She was just, so she said, what did she say? My sister said, Vera, come meet the coach. Then she said to Miss Meany, she is a good athlete. She doesn't know it yet, but she is. And I would love her to come out for field hockey. So then Miss Meany became interested in me and said, okay, let me see. And she gave me a stick, and she said, this is what you do with it. And I cracked it. No, I felt good too. So that's how I became a hockey player. But I was always on the first squad. Well, I almost would have had to be, because Marie was a star. So, you know, little sisters, you got to treat them nice too.
Yeah. Was field hockey integrated at that time?
Well, our school was, because it was so few blacks, it was impossible to segregate us. And we didn't think about it too much. I did because my father always relied on me to understand the world. And so we knew that lynching was going on and very bad things. But because everybody in Northport, well, you know, Northport in a way, its topography was like Chilmark. It was, except it had water right where you could see it. And it was like people with money lived there. Now, the town I was raised in as a little girl was Huntington, and that was a working class town, but Northport was a privileged town, and that's where I spent my, I don't know what kind of years they are, high school years, I guess you would say. Yeah, because I went there as a freshman, and it never occurred to me that they were discriminating against me. And I don't think they dared do it because, as I say, they weren't afraid. You know, most people were afraid. And what did take place was you realize the difference was by the time you got to that Dancing with Boys stage, or Boys Dancing with Girls stage, because up until then you were all the same. You threw a ball, somebody caught it. You didn't do quite that drawing back. But because my father was such a reader, I had already now read about the NAACP. I had read Souls of Black Folk by Du Bois, and I knew about segregation. And we all did, but I was particularly drawn to this. My sister was too, but my brother, he just didn't seem to care. It was at that time that the war was going on, I think, or getting ready to go on. Anyhow, they were recruiting soldiers, and they kept making these comments that black men, there were two extremes about them. This is what white people were saying. One was that black people were cowards. Black people also, you couldn't give them a gun because they'd kill everybody. So they were tough here and weak here. And my sister and I never did believe anything like that. And we knew proof because later on we really knew 100% true. But at that time we knew my grandfather had been in the Spanish-American War. My father had been in World War II. And later on, my husband was in World War I, and my brother was in World War I. So my family had ran the gamut. They had covered the waterfront, so to speak, in being a part of this country and feeling the need to protect this country. So that sort of started. No, I had started already before that in thinking of liberation from having this cloud over our heads, you know. So, but in the school, the high school, no. I mean, I went to a prom with a white fella, very nice. In fact, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he wasn't a particular, this one fellow wasn't a particular friend of mine. His name was Dolph, and he was on TV later in Give Me a Break, and he was in my class too. But the two people that I liked and respected was, now I hope I get his name right, not Dolph. He was, oh, there it goes. Maybe he'll come back to me. But anyhow, there were two fellas. One was a statesperson, you know, civic. We just talk politics all the time. And the other one wanted to be a doctor. So we allegedly talked medicine, but I didn't know a thing about it. But he would talk, and I would listen to him. But they were my two good friends. And I had female friends, too. So I never really felt what you say, the sting of segregation. I mean, nobody didn't call names or nothing like that. Although when we were younger, I did tell you, didn't I, about the Girl Scout experience?
Mm-mm, no.
Oh, shall I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. We went to a Girl Scout meeting, and I was little. I must have been about what you call a brownie age, you know. So they were singing a song, God's Little End, like shortening bread, instead of saying babies. And we were sitting there just amazed. Nobody had done that, you know, and nobody had used the N word with us. And so when they finished, my sister said, well, we don't want to join your group because your group is not a nice group, and we're leaving. So we left. So then we joined the Girl Reserves because they didn't sing songs like that. Now that's one cruel experience that did happen. I had said we didn't have it, you know, too many, but that one was truly very mean to us, and we I never forget. For a long time, I wouldn't forgive the Girl Scouts, and it wasn't after I was married and had children, and they kept pleading with me to join and be a leader and all that jazz. So I did forgive them, because I've learned too that you have to forgive. It's you can't hold something forever that happened in your childhood against the whole world, because it corrodes you. It doesn't do good, and it doesn't do too well for one. Anyhow, that part, I thought I had told you that, but I didn't tell you that. No? Okay.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Moving on to when you were in high school,
Yeah.
what were your aspirations after you had graduated?
I was going to go out and conquer the world, number one, which of course I did. But I was going to be a writer. I had already sort of forged a place in the school, and I thought it was going to come easy, but it didn't. Now this is when I began to really understand prejudice, because I went to the local newspaper, and it was owned by a woman, and I came in, and she was very sweet. Hello, Vera, how are you? They knew me, but as soon as I said, and she says, what can I do for you? I said, you can give me a job. And her whole demeanor changed. She said, a job? You want a job? I said, yes, I'm going to graduate soon, and I'd love to intern here or do something here. She said, I couldn't do that. And when I said why, because I'm not a sort of person you say I can't do it and I walk out crying, I said, why? So she told me. She said, because you're black. She didn't say black, she said, because you're a Negro. And what will my readers think? I said, I would think they'd be happy, because I'd be happy. So, So anyhow, she said no. So I didn't get that job. I went to the 5 and 10 and said, I could write, I could do your publicity, or if you can't give me that, I can even work behind a counter. They said, oh no, you can't come here. And that's when I realized that small towns were just as bad as big towns in prejudice. So I then decided, my family and I, that I would send out applications and so forth for other things, and I did. But there are too many, I'm not nuancing this properly for you, because there were other things happening in my family and so forth, which is also holding me back too, but not like that. That part was really terrible. So I then said, or my sister said, or my mother, one of those ladies. In that picture, you saw the 4 ladies? Yeah, that was my grandmother, my mother, my sister, and me. Well, they were always making decisions for me, or for all of us, anyhow. So we went, so then we decided that I needed to go to business school, which I did. And in between, there's some little mean things that happened, which I'm not, and I don't try to live through all of the meanness in life, so it was okay. But then I really became active. I joined groups that protected black people, the NAACP, the Association for the Study of Life and History. Let's see, 2 or 3, Urban League, any group that wanted to protect black people or poor people or anybody. I was a member right away. You didn't even have to talk to me. Just tell me what that purpose was. I mean, and I was right there. So I did work. That's as a young adult. What do you call people today like you? Are you a young adult or young teenager or old teenager? What do you call?
I think it would be young adult.
Oh, young adult,
Young
okay. Well, I was a young adult doing all that. So, but I got very interested, and I really felt very, very good about doing that. So that's now before I got married.
During college, did your family support you?
Yes. Well, actually, they did what they could, and I did work. You know,
You did.
they see, my father had gone to City College, but he really wanted to be something different than what he studied. He studied mechanical engineering, and that was a no-no in this society at his time. They expected black people to be one or two things: a minister, maybe if you're lucky enough to get to med school, a doctor, a teacher, if you can get there, and nurse, something like that. They never expected black people to be in the science, because now they had created this very big falsehood that black people couldn't think. You know, how could they do all this stuff? Because they didn't have the capacity or the ability, which of course is not true, but nevertheless, he studied mechanical engineering and he couldn't get a job. That was after the war. Well, he did. And so what he did was, the best job he ever got in that area was a foreman in a foundry, a candy factory. That's it, candy factory. That's the best he could do. So he really didn't make much money. And my mother did this music. She had a little orchestra, and she was an organist for the church and all that. But that's little money. And my sister, who wanted to become a nurse, couldn't become a nurse because she became obese. And they don't take obese people. You can hardly work on them. Although today I see a lot of big people, but then they did. So, but she was so smart, she started taking tests, and she started passing all these. She was always smart, business, so forth. So she was the one with the best job. My brother, he was a musician, and you know what musicians make. And until he got located with a trio, they wanted him. They went to Canada. They went all over the world. Then he made a little money, but by that time, everybody was grown up. And of course, I was making very little money in my little jobs. But I did learn a lot, and in a way, it may have been better that it was that way, or at least I felt it was pretty good, whatever I was doing. And I was doing a lot. I think in business school, I learned bookkeeping, shorthand, which I could never do, and I was always fudging it, you know. If I could fudge it, I'd write some abbreviation in there instead of the word. But it did stand me in good stead. But I'm just talking endlessly. Do you want to interrupt me at all?
Well, you said you worked in college. What did you do for work?
That's what I'm saying. I did bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't college now. It was a business school.
Yes.
See, I don't want to mislead anybody. I did go to college after I got married for a couple of years, but at that point in my life, it was really certificates. See, in business schools, I don't know, you might not be familiar. In my day, you took a course, and if you passed it, you got a certificate in it. Well, and it was really good. I mean, employers looked at it with, you know, a great deal of respect. So I did those kind of things, you know. Well, first I started like a receptionist, and then a clerk, and then a bookkeeper. So by the time I got to the Internal Revenue Service in a professional capacity, I really knew everything everybody did. So it was as good as having had a more formal, and in fact, it probably was better than a more formal education. And I never for once missed that. I didn't. So we did that. So yes.
In our conversations, you mentioned our lovely little island of Martha's Vineyard. And most people think this place is only for the presidential type, but I wanted to know what brought you to the island?
Oh, we used to go to a place called Sag Harbor in Long Island for vacations and so forth. But everybody down there dressed up. They were really too, I don't know, I guess the word would be airish. and my husband and I haven't told you about him, but at that point he was a pretty big official at the Board of Education in New York City. That's why we could afford a vacation, because you don't have vacations just because you want them. Anyhow, we had been going there, and we were a little sick of this dressing up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so somebody told us about it. I don't even remember who told us. And we came down for a visit. And Rufus, my husband, whose name was Rufus Burton Shorter, he fell madly in love. I mean, he didn't just like it. He fell in love with Martha's Vineyard. And he was a tennis player. So we came, and then he kept saying, wouldn't it be good if we had a place here, and you know, when I'm off in the summer, and he loved vacations. So I said, yeah, it would be good if we could afford it, because I didn't think we could, because both girls were in college, and that's always costs money, as you know, or you will know. So we then looked around and did buy a house in Sea Glen. And that's the house that I sold for my present house. Not I sold it, we sold it. And because, you know, I'm a kind of a mystic person. You wouldn't think it the way I'm so plain, but I am. And I was very unhappy there. Not like because anybody's doing anything, but because of the vibrations in that house. It was scary. And remember, at this time, when I'm talking about, I've skipped around. This is not in chronological order. And I don't think any conversation should be in that kind of order. You might as well be writing an obituary. If you say born this, married then, and divorced then, you know, it's not too good. So one night he was still working in New York, and I was up here by myself for the weekend, because I was still working too. And I just got this overwhelming feeling that, you know, a presence was there. And it wasn't a happy presence, because some presents that you feel are good. You know, you really relate to them. So I knew I couldn't tell my husband, who was a very pragmatic person and very bright, but he didn't believe in ghosts, to tell you the truth. Not that I call this a ghost, but anyhow, that's how I would have had to tell him. So I said to myself, let's look, Vera, you convince your husband, like I'm talking, to another person, convince your husband that we need to move. So I started talking about it. He said, what for? This is a very nice house, and blah, 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 blah. So I said, well, it's electric. The heat is electric. That costs a lot of money. So he said, yeah, it does cost a little more. He was deliberating. And I said, well, why don't we just look? We don't have to make up our minds, but so I was a little devious, I guess you might say. Anyhow, we looked and we saw this house that you visited me. And the people, I'm not going to name them, but they had not taken care of it. So it was pretty dingy and funny looking. And so he walked in the door. He said, "This dirty house?" He said, "What do you want? What do you want this house for?" I said, "Well, look out the window." And there we had a lot in front of us, which went with the house, and the water, the pond was in front. It was beautiful, really. And all the trees, and that lot had all these green trees. It was really lovely. So he said, "Well, that's pretty, but we don't live there." He said, "We live here." And he said, "I'm going to go play tennis. You make up your mind." So I made up my mind. So I told the real estate broker, I'm very interested, and we're very interested, and now let's get a price within. And then it had a little cottage, well, it had an apartment above a garage, and another land over here, land here, land there. I'm demonstrating, but if anybody's listening, they couldn't possibly know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, we did buy the house, and I never felt that sort of overwhelming presence again. But I have other experiences, which I'm not going to go into today. That would be another interview.
Well, that was a good story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I know.
As you know, you're a local celebrity and known for your charitable work and your empowering presence in the community. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about your experiences with the many organizations you've taken part in?
Well, I have sure had a lot. I can't really shyly say, oh, one or two, but that's not true. Let's see. I've always supported the black organizations, and then I worked for community services. I was on their board, and I've always liked plays and acting and showing off and all that stuff. And so I worked with Lee Fierro in, what's the name of that group? Well, they do the children's theater, but they had a bigger group. And so I was on that board to help them raise. When you get on a board here, the whole objective is to raise money. You think you're doing policy, but you're really out there raising money. So I worked with Lee Fierro. I worked with the community services, the hospital board. I'm telling you, I don't want to tell you all the boards because it'll bore you to death. It was too many of them. But I enjoyed them. I really did. And I liked making money. I mean, for charity. I should like it for myself, but I don't know. Somehow I move over that way. And what was interesting of everything was the NAACP, because at that time there was discrimination on this island. I mean, they weren't selling land to black people or even to Native Americans if they could avoid it. And so they did need some help. Now, the way we did, I was, first I was chair of their, it's like the, I guess you might call it the legal redress, which is later become, but it was like an equal opportunity committee in there. So I was chair of that. So we developed a formula that we wanted to see at least one black face in some stores, at least in some, one or two in a town. There were none. One lady, I won't name the store she was in too. But you knew that something was wrong. I mean, there were people here, and they're buying just like everybody else. So what we would do is we would visit these people very quietly, not like the mafia, but very quietly, and tell them how we felt, and with a sort of a nuance threat that you don't do something about this, we won't be coming here. We'll get other people not to come. Only we didn't do it quite as blatantly as that. And we never would talk about it or put it in the papers because that's what they would first thing they worry about. Are you going to march against us or what? And we say, no, not now. I mean, we want to see what you're going to do. And don't you know we got more people hired than we ever thought we would. And also, we worked on the towns because the towns would have big contracts with people to build things, like that bridge up here that they built, things of that nature, structural things. And we found that the argument that they would give us was that they're not doing it. They're farming it out to somebody else, and they can't help that. And we said, oh, yes, you can. And so we showed them how you could. You definitely can set up a situation where when you give them a contract, you include, the law had now been passed too, so we had something to work with. You can insist on it following through. It's great to have a law over here somewhere, and you never enforce it. So they did. And I think you've seen with the bridge building and the other things, I think you've seen some black faces, and that was very good. The other thing that I found very interesting that I wanted to do was with Nathan Mayhew's seminars, which I wanted the townspeople and the celebrities or the well-to-do people to have more of mingling, and that brought that about. It really did, because it was glamorous. The people, we working class folks, we were the ones who took care of the work, what you call the nitty-gritty or the ordinary jobs, and they played tennis, but they had to pay to play tennis. So for Nathan Mayhew, we raised lots of money, really lots of money. In fact, I can't remember what his name is. It's on an N. He's from Jersey. He was the owner of a house by the water, and adjacent to his house was a member of our committee who was one of the upper Hoosies, Exton. Her name was Exton. And so we got, in order to have a cocktail party that was really big, which we wanted, and have all the town, I don't like to call people ordinary, I don't mean it like that. I mean the people who were not rich, but they were well off. They were middle-class people, though, black or white, most of them, because they couldn't afford to go if they weren't. Anyhow, but they were not of that group. So they worked together, and we raised thousands of dollars. We really did. And I felt very good. And some of those people are still friends with me and with other people like me of that period. The same thing, I tried to do that with community services, but it really didn't work too well, But you always have to have somebody beat the bushes. And I got tired. So I'm not saying they couldn't exist without me, but they could, and they did, but it wasn't as popular as it had been with Nathan Mayhew's seminars. And one thing about my husband, two things, that he should be remembered for sure, because he and Mr. Honey of the bank really got the Performing Arts Center up, because they had been trying to build that center for years, and they could never get the towns. The 6 towns have to agree, and of course the high school had to agree, but it all had to do with the money, and you couldn't get them to agree on money, because one says, I'm not going to pay that much, and the other one says this, you know how that goes. And in order to get that kind of money, because they were in the millions, you have to have bonds. That's why you need a bank. And Mr. Honey, I can't think of his first name, but he was a wonderful man. He and Rufus really got that high school. And I say to people that his vision for that Performing Arts Center was not just for the high school, it was for the community to use. And I think they don't seem to know that he did this work. I mean, people don't, if you say Mr. Shorter, they don't know who that is. They may know my name, but they don't know his. And that's ridiculous, because he really did work. And I know he worked, because I went to a couple of those meetings, and I mean, they'll kill you. If anything was going to kill you, those meetings will kill you. we went there. So anyhow, that was a very positive part of our experience on the vineyard. That it did come about, he worked hard to do it, and I was very proud of him that he got it done, really. But you know, what can you do? You do the very best you can. And he did his very, very best. I could start crying thinking about it, but I don't want to do that. So that question had another aspect to it. Read that. What is it again? What was your question again?
Well, I was going to ask about, you did huge things for the Nathan Mayhew organization.
Yes.
With the tennis tournaments and everything. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh yeah. Well, we got all of these. We didn't do it for ourselves, because the celebrities worked too. Rose Styron, Lucy Hackney, Isabel Shattuck, I think, and more than I can name. Wallace, Mike. Isn't his name Mike Wallace? Mike, yeah. And a couple of movie stars. One who was related to the Kronigs, he came up. I can't remember his name, and I didn't write that down, which I really feel awkward coming to a conversation with things written down. If I were the interviewer, yes, but I'm the interviewee, and I should at least know what I'm talking about. So anyhow, I gained a lot from that experience, and I think they gained a lot from that experience. And it went on for X number, maybe 10 years. And I think at that time, sort of at the end, my daughter had her baby. She was gotten married, and she had the baby. And I wanted to go to Europe to see my grandchild. So I kind of moved it over to other people. But it's like anything else, they didn't have the same kind of love for it that I had, and I really pushed. But they did carry it on. It went on for, you know. But you always have to have somebody who has the passion, and some people don't, that's all. They want to see it done, but they don't have the time or the effort or anything. Anyhow, it dwindled down. So, but we had a good run, and you know, we did. I think the name of the band I was trying to think is Ludeman, who was a congressman from Jersey who used to let us use his place. And by the way, there's a nice little tidbit attached to that. The person who bought that house from him, this house and this lawn, all the way down to the water, was a black kid. Well, he's not a kid now, but his name is Peter Grain. And these people went to school with him. And he became a millionaire. And very few islanders become millionaires. The millionaires come here, but very few. I'll say us, like I'm a millionaire, like I'm a member of the group, but very few. And he bought it, and I talked to him, and his sister. I'm very fond of her, so he came over to the house, and I went to her house, and we had dinner. So he's very proud of himself. I don't blame him. You know, everybody doesn't get to be a millionaire, and some millionaires you don't want to be. But that was very true. These women, like Rose Styron and so forth, really and truly worked. They weren't names that you put. In fact, they worked, and then they had to pay, because that was our rule. You know, you can't be on the committee and not pay. If you wanted to go to the tournament, you had to pay. So I think I really am very happy to say something nice about them, because they were nice women, and also they worked. See, I know a lot of nice people who don't work. You know, they'll say, oh, well, yeah, I'll be on the committee, thank you. And that's the end of them. They just want their name on a piece of paper. Well, these ladies worked. They really, really and truly did. And it was wonderful, to tell you the truth. I don't know how long they remained after I left, but I know they did remain. I didn't pull them out, you know, just by not being a part of it. Sometimes that happens too. And but they did fine, and I really have a great deal of affection for those people too. In fact, I have Lucy Hackney. Her husband was president of a college in Pennsylvania, and he was also in the humanities in Washington, whatever that group is for taking care of the arts in the country, in the United States. Well, he was in charge of that, and he too was a wonderful person, and Mike Wallace was too. And, I mean, some of the men were not. I mean, they were. Not, it isn't that they were not nice. I didn't mean that. I mean, they didn't want to be bothered. They came down here to relax, and this was not relaxing being on committees that work. You know, where you have to go out here and sell tickets and bother people a little bit. So, but some of them really did, and to this day I have a great deal of regard and respect. And also I say there's so much left to be done. I just hope people like you will do it. You know, will do something and not just say, uh-oh, time to go, you know, that kind of thing.
It looks like we're running out of time. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm hopeful that we will do something about gun control. I really am. I think that we're the only country in the world where these kind of things happen, and it's as if people don't understand why the colonists or the early settlers wanted guns. They don't seem to, they act like the same thing is happening right today, and it's not. And I really find it almost shameful, in fact, not almost, shameful, that a person could go out and buy what I call an ack-ack gun, a gun that repeats, you know. Hunters don't need that. You're not even giving the animal a fair chance when you have a gun that you do 10 bullets at a time. So it's just money, and it's shameful. I mean, we just had I don't know how many of these attacks by so-called unstable people. But if those unstable people couldn't get a gun like that, at least they couldn't kill as many. You could have some common sense about this stuff. And like my daughter is in England, that's where she works, and she says, people don't have guns like that. And in fact, I didn't tell you about my children. and I have to tell you a little bit. But my daughter's name is Lynn, and she is a senior instructor at UCLan, that's UCLAN, is the University of Central Lancashire, Northwest England. And my Beth Shorter, my younger daughter, she was a soloist with Alvin Ailey Company, the Alvin Ailey Company. She was on Broadway with Bob Foxy's dancing, and she has performed in Europe and all over the world. And then I have a nephew. Why would I call my grandson a nephew? That's old age. He went to St. Francis College, a full scholarship. And I think he studied international business. He lives and works in New York. And he was a soccer star in college, but I don't think he got picked up, you know. Sometimes you're really very good. Like I was a bit of a star. They named me in hockey woman, the best, I don't know what they call them. It was something like the best hockey player on the island, and I got that award. No, I didn't get that award. I got the award for my high school, but I was nominated for that award. See, I got nominated for a lot of things and I don't get it, but it was because I had the same thing at the IRS, you know, where I became it's like a director, and I was nominated there for Woman of the Year of Internal Revenue Service, and I didn't get that either. But the nomination is supposed to make you feel good. It made me feel good, and all that, because I had, and I know why they nominated me, because I taught the students. No, they weren't necessarily. I had college students too. I had interns, whatever. I had a whole group of everybody learning something. But it wasn't that I was going to tell you. When I was the equal opportunity officer, and I started studying where people were and what they were doing, I found that we had a lower clerical pool, and these people were all college graduates, some with masters, but everyone I'm talking about who was highly educated like that was black. And I said, there's something wrong here in this IRS. And so I started a course on my own and I didn't ask them for money, them being the hierarchy. And I said, okay, anybody who wants to come to Vera's training course, so you can pass the professional test, sign up free. Lunch hour, you had to give them a lunch hour. And I don't know, every one of those students passed the professional service. The entrance is called the entrance exam, government entrance exam. And everyone passed it. Some became supervisors, and I don't know what the others are, but nobody failed it. That's the main thing. Yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, and I've enjoyed our time together.
Oh, our time was up, and I was talking over it, huh?
It's all right.
Oh, you should have interrupted me. I don't mind.
But I've enjoyed our time together, and it's been educational and inspiring, to say the least.
Oh, thank you.
And I wanted to present you with this bouquet of flowers and a thank you card
for
letting me get to know you.
How lovely. This is very, very nice. I want to read the card. I received this lovely card and flowers from Susanna. Thank you, Vera, for allowing me to get to know you. I've had a great time talking with you these past few months. I am so lucky to have been able to learn more, and during the stressful project, you made me feel welcome and eased a lot of the stress. Thank you again for taking the time to be a part of this. You and your story are amazing, and I can't wait to share it with the world. Thank you, Susanna Becchio. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Susanna Becchio and Miss Vera Shorter signing off, and we'll see you next time.
And thank you for these lovely roses. And also, this is a lovely station with lovely people running it.